Hey folks, it's Frithgar here, how you doing? Welcome back to Farming Simulator 19 here in Boulder Canyon. We are going to continue on with doing our outside round on the field here, planting the soybeans. And yes, I did remember just after I finished the last episode to switch it down to 1x speed for our planting. Because if we don't do that, we'll end up with half a field that's partly grown and half a field that's not. And that's not something that I want. So we will continue on with the outside round. I'm going to do 2 rounds around the outside. And then once I've done that, I'm not actually going to go right round the outside. Although, no, I won't. No, because it'll be quicker if we do it like this. So I'm not going to go right round the outside. I'm just going to do the bits that we've already done. And I'm not going to do the long straight up through there. And then once we've done that, the hired help can carry on with this, and we can go back to doing our other stuff. Let's just lift that one up like that. Yeah, we can go back to doing the trees over there, cut down a load more trees, and then get them sold so that we've got enough money to be able to buy our new sheep pen. It's very important that we're able to buy the sheep pen. But we don't just want to buy the sheep pen, we're also going to need something to be able to move the sheep from one pen to the other. So we've got to be able to afford that. Plus the water extension on the new sheep pen as well is equally important. So we've got a few things that we're going to need to be able to buy in order to be able to get it all to work, which means that we're going to need around $200,000, I would think. I did think that we could kind of not go for quite that much, but that's not really going to work. We'll need, well, it'll be about $205,000, but we're not going to be able to sell the small sheep pen without moving all of the sheep over. We got to move all of the sheep, and I don't want to sell any of them. I would rather keep them so that they keep breeding. So yeah, we don't really have many options as far as that's concerned. I'm thinking that well, yeah, I was just, like, I was trying to think if there's any other way that we could do it, but there isn't. We don't really have a lot of options. We've got to be able to buy a new sheep pen, then move all of the sheep before we can even consider selling the small sheep pen, which we're going to do anyway. I do want to sell the small sheep pen, and I'm thinking most likely, because I did originally say that we could put a large sheep pen there in its place. I need to actually start the seed drill as well. That would help. And I was thinking that we'd put a large sheep pen up there, but I'm now thinking a large chicken pen to go in place of where the sheep are now would work better. We can put a load of chickens in there, and we can have the egg pallets out the front so that we've got a supply of eggs coming in, and we won't need to do any more to that. We just have the chickens exactly just like that, and they take up about the same space as the small sheep pen. Then we can have 2 large sheep pens across the road across the little lane that we've got from where the sheep are now. That should make life a little bit easier. And then if we decide to go for a second chicken pen, we can put that one opposite side of the road as well, because I'm going to make sure that I leave enough room to be able to fit one in just down near the edge of the road, and then we'll have both chicken pens close together and both the sheep pens as well. That's my plan. That's the plan there. Then cows, they're going to go right up the top of the hill over there. They're going to be separate. They're going to be away from the rest of it, because there's nothing that we've got down here that we would need regularly with the cows for feeding them every day or anything like that. We've got a little bit of hay that we will keep down here for the sheep. And then the rest of the hay and silage that we want for the cows, we will keep that up there. We'll store that up there for the cows. And then we're not going to have to worry about having to do anything else. Now, I did ask you before if you thought that I should get a hay dryer building, so that we can deal with loose hay, as well as having a potentially one of the silage making machines from the global mod thing, and a stationary feed mixer as well. And or should I just do it with the like the base game stuff. And a lot of you said that actually you would like me to use the Global Mod Company stuff. Even though I'm planning to use it for another series, you still want to see me using it in this series as well. And you think that it would fit with the series quite fine. It's not like excessive or anything like that. So I will almost certainly do it like that. We will use the hay... Well, I'm not sure about the haydryer. Well, I'll wait and see about the haydryer. But certainly the mixed feeder... This one in here, Global Company. That one right there, the cow feed mixer. A lot of you said, yes, we should use that one. But we do have the haydryer, and I don't remember. I think it's sort of fairly split half and half on whether I should be using that one or not. The fermenting silo, quite a lot of you thought that I should use that one, because it will certainly make life a lot easier as far as silage is concerned. We just need to pick the grass up and put it in there. However, at the moment, we don't have anything to pick the grass up with. We could just go and bale the grass as grass, and we could do it like that, like we do already, and then instead of wrapping it, take the bales and drop them into that one. I don't know if it will accept bales, though. It's... yeah. I know that the mixed feeder... Well, I'm fairly certain the mixed feeder does, but I don't know if that one accepts bales or not. We'll have to wait and see on that. What on earth do you think you're doing? There's no stumps down there. It's something to do with the fact that the field is where the field is. Oh. No, he's turning the right way. But he's come all the way up here, and he's going to leave a strip. Right the way down through. Now, we already looked. There was no tree stump underneath this area here. And if I back up like this, it's not like he does it. I think it's because it's the edge of the field, and it just confuses it a little bit. Okay, that was terrible driving right there. Let's bring that one over there, like that. There we go. We straighten up a little bit, and we'll come over to here, like that. And now we can go. There's no stump under there, otherwise he would turn around and he would do something with that. So it makes me think it's something to do with that field there. Because there's definitely no stump that's kind of making it do that. Otherwise it would have done it again then. It would have stopped and it would have turned around. So I think it's to do with the field over there. And I reckon that once we've done that field and we've gone all the way along, then everything will be just fine. Okay, we're going to leave that one there. He's going to carry on and do that. And we're going to go up here. I'm going to keep cutting down trees. I'd like to get quite a few trees cut down now, so that we have quite a good slice of money. And we're able to get the sheep. So we're going to be... well, we've got a lot of cutting to do. I know that much. That one onto there. Not quite sure how long it's going to take to get all of the trees that I'd like cut, but it shouldn't be all that long. I will also come up through and we'll do a bit more with the stump grinding here. I don't want to leave the whole thing until the very end, because that's just going to be asking for trouble. If we leave the whole thing right until the very end, we're going to be left with... right, I've got a little short stumpy bit there. Need to get rid of that. I'll do that right now, because if I don't, I end up losing them, and then we find them much, much later on. Chop. No. Okay, I chopped the end off there. That didn't work. There we go. Right. That's that bit dealt with. Now I can get the next tree, which is this one, and then we've got one to our left. So anyway, I was going to be talking about different cultivators. Now, I am not particularly experienced when it comes to arable farming. So I'm not all that experienced on which different cultivators to use at different times. You wouldn't normally, in my experience, you wouldn't normally have several different kinds of cultivator on a farm. What you would have, and what I have seen and personally worked with, is a set of disc culters alongside some other types, right? So you've got disc harrows right here, which is just these discs, yeah? Now, I have worked on farms that have got disc harrows. They've got these, and then they've also got other types as well. So they've got those, and then they've got these types of cultivators, yeah, with mixtures of different configurations of spikes. Now, the different configurations of spikes, that depends on the soil type. The heavier the soil, it is more usual that you would have more robust, heavy-duty spikes for a heavier type of soil. However, that's not always the case. Different cultivators work slightly differently. You get the springtime type, which they do need to be fairly thin because they vibrate from side to side and they shatter the soil and the clods of the soil as they go past with the side-to-side vibrations. That's how the springtime works. The heavier ones, they don't do it like that. It's just the simple overall size and weight of them that break up the clods as they work through them. And if you're in a soil that is particularly heavy clay soil and it's not suited to a springtime, chances are you'd probably have to do a double pass over the soil anyway with any type of cultivator. It's just something, I mean, not always, but very often very often you'd have to work it twice in order to be able to get it broken down enough to be a fine, workable tilth. And that's why you often have cultivators that are quite long. If you look at some of the bigger cultivators that we've now got available, I can just get that tree to fall correctly. I'll cut this tree and I'll show you a couple of the examples. The reason that those cultivators are so long is to avoid having to do a second pass. We look in here. These are fairly cheap standard ones, and yes, if you have a heavy soil, very likely you would have to go over twice with those cultivators. That would just kind of be a given. This one right here, and most soils you'd only have to do a single pass. Very occasionally you might have some very heavy soils not breaking down very well. This one here would typically be, as far as... Now, anything I say about what these cultivators are for, take with a pinch of salt, because like I've said a few times, I'm not very experienced when it comes to arable farming and working soils. So there are going to be plenty of people who have had a lot more experience than me and know a bit more about it. But as far as I know, something like this would be used in heavy soil, and the number of rows of tines that you've got here would ensure that you wouldn't need to do two passes. That would be a single pass all the way through. And that there is designed, as far as I know, for heavy soil. And this is also a spring tine. You look at that, you can see the narrow tine coming down. It's got quite a wide foot on it down there, but it's also got a narrow piece of metal coming down to the tine, so that would vibrate from side to side. And with the sheer length of that thing there, the sheer length of the overall machine, I would be very surprised if under any soil conditions you would have to go over it twice with that bad boy right there. And the same with the other longer ones, and that's why you've got the longer ones. So that's what those are for, those really long ones. If you've got a fine sandy soil, you're not going to need to go over those things twice. You are not going to need to go over your fields twice. So you're not going to need to fork out for a huge, great, big, long cultivator like that. You could have a wide cultivator, but you wouldn't need it to be very long at all. It would work just fine with a much narrower one. So you could get by with a nice wide width, but much less horsepower actually pulling it through the field. Now, a disc harrow, some people use it for breaking down the soil. And it is commonly used for breaking down the soil, but it's also used as a preparation thing for when you've got heavy material on top of the soil. And in my experience, that was what it was used for. I worked in an area that had a mixture of heavy clay to a sort of a medium loam type soil. So most of it required a fair bit of work, and just going over it with a disc harrow was not enough. If you needed to break up the soil, then you needed to go over it. Either we did a direct drill, or where it was fully ploughed and then cultivated all the way through. And you wouldn't take a disc harrow going over ploughed ground. The disc harrow was for, say, after we'd done the oilseed rape, the canola harvest, the combine would cut quite high on the OSR, because you only want, going through the combine, you don't want all of the crop residue going through the combine. You only want the seed heads going through. So you cut quite high off the ground, much higher than you do with most other crops. So after you're finished, you're left with stubble that is really, really high. And this causes a bit of a problem. And there's a couple things that you can do with that. You either go over it with a topper, and that's, just like a type of a mower that isn't actually designed to mow and leave stuff in a swath. It's just designed to cut at a height and just take the tip off of whatever you're cutting. And so you sometimes would go over the oilseed rape stubble with a topper, and I spent quite a few hours doing that. It's a very dreary job. Or go over it with the disc harrows, and the disc harrow will go over it. It breaks it up quite nicely, and on top of that, it helps to cut up the crop residue that's left behind, because there is, even though you have gone through the combine and you've gone and cut up the you've gone through the combine, and so most of the crop residue that went through the combine has been mashed up ish, because it's gone through the choppers. There's still quite a bulky quantity of the stuff left, and on top of that, you've also got all of the standing residue that's left in the field. So you go over it with the disc coulters, with a disc harrow, and that chops it up. It chops up that soil, the crop residue that's left standing, and it helps to further chop up the stuff that's on the ground left behind by the combine. And it mixes it up a little bit with the top couple of inches of soil. And this is quite important. This is a really important thing to have happen, because if you don't do that, when you're going over the same soil with the direct drill, you can end up, because there's such a large quantity of crop residue that's left behind, you can end up with it sort of accumulating and balling up in front of the direct drill and causing all sorts of problems. There really is a huge amount of crop residue left behind. So you end up with this stuff balling up and causing huge, great big heaps, piling up in front of the direct drill, and then you're not actually drilling. It's just causing lots of problems. You've got to keep getting out, and you've got to keep shoveling the stuff out of the way. So going over with the disc harrows and working the ground with that, you ended up mixing it in with the soil, and so it spreads it out a little bit, and that allows it spreads it out just enough to allow the discs to be able, not the discs, the coulters on the direct drill to be able to go through it, to pass through it without sort of balling the stuff up into a great big lump. And that's what you want. You need to be able to actually get the next crop in the ground. It certainly helps with the whole ongoing process of being an arable farmer. So that's what we used the disc coulters for. Now, the downside to doing any of that after you've done an oilseed rape harvest is that you get all of this crop residue can be quite a good harbour for slugs. It can be quite a problem for slugs. So what you do is that they put down a lot of slug pellets. So if you've got OSR residue on the ground, lots and lots of slug pellets are generally used in order to try and reduce the slugs. And you use slug pellets over all of it anyway on arable farms, unless it's an organic arable farm. And I think there are actually organic slug pellets that you can use. But yeah, slug pellets are sort of an essential. The slugs are a huge, huge problem in arable farming, especially when you're doing a lot of direct drilling. Because of the crop residue there, it's the perfect home for slugs. And so after the rapeseed's all been harvested, you've got this massive quantity of material it's left there behind. I was just trying to think, biodegradable material, and it's all left there. You've got this massive quantity of it. It's absolutely perfect conditions for slugs. It's perfect for them. They love it. You get a little bit of rain on that, it stays wonderfully damp in there, and there's plenty of organic residue there for them to eat, and it's absolutely ideal conditions for slugs. So you kind of want to avoid that. So that's why that they would throw around huge quantities of slug pellets. We're now getting problems in this country with slugs that are resistant to slug pellets. So we're basically, by constantly killing off the weaker slugs, we're just as a country, breeding a breed of super slugs that you go and throw out the slug pellets, and all they do is to come along and look at them and think, ooh, lunch, ideal, thank you very much, and chow down on the slug pellets without any adverse effects whatsoever. So we're breeding super slugs here in this country at the moment. But yeah, that's what the different types of cultivators for. And then you've got the power harrow. Now, the power harrow is basically it's just another type of cultivator that has the PTO running it. So it's got moving parts on it, rather than just parts that move under the mechanical means of traveling across the field. The power harrow sits on the PTO shaft and it goes along. A single pass with a power harrow hammers down that soil, and it really breaks it up into a very fine tilth, and it only requires one pass, regardless of how heavy the soil is. You just adjust the speed of the tractor to reflect how well it should work. With a springtime cultivator, you really only have one suitable speed to go through. You can adjust the speed a little bit, but the vibration of the springtimes going from side to side, that's kind of your main action on the field. That's the kind of the main action on all of the clods and stuff that you're trying to break down. And going too fast, you're not going to be able to do anything. It's not going to work. And going too slow doesn't actually produce the required vibration that you need in order to be able to have the thing working effectively. So you've only really got a limited speed range with one of those cultivators. And if you're in a position where you're going really slowly through the field, it's not going to work. So if you've got an underpowered tractor trying to go uphill with one, you're not really going to do a lot apart from just stir the stuff round. It's not going to get the vibration going on the coulters that you need in order to be able to break that stuff apart. So it only works effectively on an underpowered tractor going downhill. And that can be a bit of a problem. Now, with the power harrow, you don't have that limitation in any way, shape, or form. What you got with the power harrow is you can choose how fast you... Obviously, you go too fast, it's not going to be able to mash up the soil, because you've got these moving parts, just a whole load of things all spinning round. You go too fast, and it's not going to be able to process the soil properly. You can go as slow as you like, and it's going to produce a good quality tilth on the soil. You go really super slow, but obviously you'd want to go as fast as you're able to and still produce the desired results. Power harrows being used on their own is a lot less common these days than it used to be. Power harrows are almost always these days incorporated into a single pass operation where you have the power harrow going along and then you have something sowing the seeds immediately afterwards. A power harrow does have the advantage that you don't have to plow beforehand. In a lot of circumstances, you can just use the power harrow to break up the soil directly in front of you. You don't need to go through it with a plow beforehand. You can just use the harrow. And then on top of that, you've got the next part of the operation would be the seed drill going through, and then you would have some kind of roller on the back of it so that you don't need to go. You'd have some sort of, probably Cambridge rolls or something like that. It's a type of roller, basically. Just to squash it all down afterwards and make sure that it's all in the ground properly. And you'd have all of that in a single pass operation. And single pass operations are becoming more and more important in arable farming, certainly in this country, because it avoids compaction. You've got less times that you're traveling over the field, and plus it's cost effective. Your cost effectiveness of going once across the field instead of going 3 times across the field is it's just much better. It's what you want to be able to do. And so using the power harrow, whilst it is still done, it's certainly a lot less common now to see it just being used on its own. I have seen it being used on its own. I've done it myself a little bit with the type of power harrow, but not really very much. Literally I've done maybe, I think, a couple of hours with one of those. Nothing much to speak of at all. And yeah, you would normally see it as part of a kit. And I think we do actually have that kit in here. You make it up. You go with the power harrow right here. You've got that one. Look, see the DC 401 BTF 4000. That one right there then goes on to the seeder in here, that one right there. So the power harrow goes on the front, then this one goes on the back, and that goes on the front of the tractor. So you've got a single pass operation where it breaks down the soil and it does the planting in a single pass. And this is something that is becoming more and more common. You would see that a lot. And that is the usual use of one of these as well. I mean, that one right there is a mod one. This one here is designed to go with some of the other kit as well. That one's 4 meters wide. It fits the drill that it's supposed to go with perfectly well. And that one's the Rabi. Is it Rabi? Or something like that. And then we look in here. Is there one that goes with it? It's a 3 meter one. D830. The D830. It fits that one. So it said D830, didn't it? Yeah, the D830. That one goes on the front, the D830 goes on behind it, and you do a single pass operation, cultivating and drilling at the same time. So these bits in here, these spin round really fast, and that can act like a plough, instead of you actually having to use a plough at all. And then that little spike right there, that is directly lined up behind the wheels, and it gives an extra little bit of work being done. You can adjust the depth of that as well, or you should be able to, so that you can do a slightly bit of a deeper bit of work on the bit where the wheels of the tractor were as you move up and down the field. So that's what the power harrow is for. So that's what your general different types of harrows are for. So you can have a power harrow being used on its own to go and cultivate the field. A power harrow does and has often been used in place of a plough, although it's not very common to do that. It's more common now with the single pass operations than it used to be. And then the various different types of cultivators. A disc cultivator, if you've ploughed the ground and you've got a disc cultivator, and you've got fairly light soil, you go over it with a disc cultivator and you'll break the soil up really nicely. If you've got a heavy soil, a disc cultivator probably wouldn't be sufficient, and you'd need a springtine to go over it or something similar. And then depending on the soil type, it depends sort of how much work. But it's also down to personal preference. Some farmers prefer a springtine type approach. Some farmers prefer a disc cultivator. I know farmers that use disc cultivators, but they use it for all of their work that they do. Sometimes they've got to do a couple of passes. They do it after, for cultivating after the plough has been over. But they also have quite a lot of arable land where they're using it to sort of break up the rapeseed residue that's been left after the crop has been done, the canola. They're also using it to break that up. And so rather than buying a new and separate cultivator, they just have the one. And it's quite a wide, big cultivator, so they can rush through most of the land with that. Large-scale farms usually aren't too concerned about the cost of buying an additional cultivator, because on the grand scheme of things, the price of a cultivator is not particularly excessive. So it's not going to be a major hardship for a large farm to get an extra cultivator or three. Very often there will be more than one cultivator on a farm, because they'll have quite a few people. If you've got 5,000 or 6,000 acres of land in this country, you're gonna have 5 or 6 people working for you as well in order to be able to farm all of that land, and therefore you're gonna be, well, I say that, but under most circumstances you would have at least 5 or 6 people working over that kind of quantity of land. So when it comes to cultivating, you could very well want 3 or 4 people doing it all at once. So it wouldn't be unusual to, well, maybe not, certainly 2 or 3, it wouldn't be unusual to have multiple cultivators on a farm so that they can go through and get all of the job done all in one go. But there we go. So that's what the different types of cultivators are generally used for, at least as far as I know. Like I've said, my agricultural experience is predominantly with sheep and beef farming. I've had a little bit of experience with dairy farming. That's not a big stretch away from beef, although I've not personally had much to do with milking cows. I've certainly worked on farms that have had milking cows on them, It's just that I've never really had anything to do with the actual milking part. But sheep and beef is the majority of my experience, and... Oop, okay, I'm way out on there. Trying to see it. It's very, very difficult to see this sometimes. Sheep and beef are the majority of my experience. So, everything to do with them as well, which is grass production in large quantities. So making hay and making silage. I've had a lot of experience with making hay and silage. I've had very little experience, real life experience with maize silage. It's been almost all of it has been grass silage, with a very small amount of whole crop silage that I did do when I worked for a contractor for a while, but I had nothing to do with planting and growing it. I've had very limited experience working on an arable farm. I did work on an arable farm for nearly 2 years on, well, a couple of different arable farms. Nearly 2 years, so I experienced a few harvests and things like that, and also the planting and everything sort of in between. I sort of experienced the whole lot for a couple of years, and I've done a lot more harvest work than I have with any other aspect of arable farming. Most of the harvest work I did, though, was not to do with actually harvesting grain, although I have done some. Most of my harvest work experience was entirely to do with the straw that came afterwards, because I worked for a couple of people actually, who dealt with buying, baling up, stacking, storing, and then selling in the winter all the straw off of some very large estates. So I have a lot of experience when it comes to straw harvest, handling bales and moving straw bales and storing of them and all of that. I've got thousands and thousands of hours involved in that. And then general farming day-to-day life is, like I said, sheep and beef. So the working the soil for an arable farm, that is something that I've got much less experience in than most other aspects of farming. Pigs, I kept a pig myself once, several years actually, but only one, and that's my experience with pigs. That's it. That is my only experience with pigs, is I kept one once a long time ago. I know people who've kept pigs, and I know people who keep pigs, and so I am able to draw on my experiences with talking to them, and from what I've learned in other places. But yeah, actually farming pigs, I don't know a huge amount about it, other than what I've read and researched. So there again is a bit of a gap in my knowledge. So for the arable stuff, for actually working soil and how it's done and different techniques and stuff, I tell you what I know. Well, I'll tell you what I think I know. That's the thing, though. A little bit of knowledge can be a very dangerous thing, and it's been said before. A little bit of knowledge and a lot of ignorance is an incredibly dangerous thing. And I have a little bit of knowledge and a lot of ignorance when it comes to arable farming, in regards to planting and crop rotations and working soil and stuff. Harvests, a lot more, but the actual planting aspect of it, not so much. So if I've made any terrible mistakes, if I've got anything really horribly wrong on my assessment of what the cultivators can and can't do, what you would generally and typically use them for, please tell me in the comments. I would absolutely love to know, because there is nothing I despise more than passing on false information. If you know that something I've said is wrong or utterly, completely, ridiculously absurd, make sure you tell me. Correct me in the comment section. That's what the comment section is for. It's not just to... I know that there are some channels out there that think that the comment section is only to receive copious quantities of praise. I think that is a ridiculous idea. If you don't critique me, if you don't point out where I'm going wrong, how am I going to learn, and how am I going to improve and get things better or get things right next time round? If I've made a mistake, make sure you tell me. So if I've gotten anything wrong with the whole cultivators thing today, then make sure you tell me on that. I'm going to get one more tree for now. There. We've cut down a lot of trees now. I'm going to cut down just a few more, I think, down in front of us. And then I think we will go and get the truck. It's going to be our next episode. We've run out of time for today. In our next episode, we will go and get that truck down there. Yeah, we've got a few more trees in front of us. Let's turn you off, I think. Hang on. Go back to him. Yeah, I've got quite a few logs up there, I think, that we'll be able to work with. We are almost finished doing the planting, unfortunately, so our window of one-time speed is fast coming to an end. So we will go and gather up the trees that we've got cut down in our next episode, and we'll go and get those sold, and we'll see if we're anywhere close to our grand total of about 200,000 that we're going to need in order to be able to finish all of this field. Anyway, we have run out of time for today, so if you've enjoyed this episode, then please hit down below and give us a like. And if you really enjoyed it, then please tell your friends all about me, get them to come and watch as well, that would be awesome. And until next time, thank you very much for watching, this is Frithgar, goodbye, and see you later.